want to start off this series by asking you an important question. And no, it's not, yeah, why did you wait here? Are you lazy? Okay, that's hurtful, but fair. And to give you an abridged answer, I was getting some shit sorted. And to give you a more accurate answer, yes, I am incredibly lazy. But that's not the question I want to ask you. It's something a bit more relevant to the future of this series, if I keep doing these. No, I want to ask you, why do we think history is written by the victors? We're taught that sentiment growing up and well into adulthood. And on the surface, that seems correct. Of course, the winners write down their own history and use it as a benchmark. That's just what you do if you're a winner. But I'd argue, history isn't as narrow as the typically zero-sum game that it is portrayed to be. And to prove my point, let us briefly discuss the 1935 German propaganda film Triumph des Willens, or as most people refer to it as, Triumph of the Will. If you know anything about this film, it's probably two things. The first is that it's a Nazi propaganda film, and the second, that despite its horrible ideology, it's a really impressive film, a technical masterpiece. It's basically the Iliad of film. So few people have actually read the entire thing or watched the movie, but they know of its cultural significance, and they'll probably take your word for it when they hear, yeah, it's pretty good. And that's just as well. Most people don't have 6 years to read a book or, 2 hours to watch a propaganda film, but just as well, having seen it, it's fucking long, and despite the subject matter and the hideously disgusting ideology that drives it, it's somehow really goddamn boring and lame. Like, aggressively boring. You see, despite German expressionism being foundational in regards to the cinematic language and the medium in general, it seems as though Triumph of the Will was adamant and not moving the art of filmmaking any further like its predecessors. Everything that Triumph of the Will did was all cribbed from other filmmakers, and even other propaganda films made at the time. It's almost unwatchable, if not for the sheer audacity of what you're observing, the ridiculous, heavy-handed, almost parodic levels of excess on display, the way the shots linger seemingly ad infinitum, well after the point has been belabored. And all of this to serve one singular motif, if you can even call it that. A global declaration. Look at us. We are here. We are infinite. And we are overwhelmingly powerful. It's done so blatantly that I'm almost positive that during the editing of this film, were it not for the threat of death, one of the editors probably would have said, all right, maybe tone it down. We get it. We employ some mise-en-scène, huh? Although that's French, so maybe some auf der Bodenplatzen. I don't know. I don't speak Nazi. The point is, this movie is fucking bad, and if you want to hurt yourself by watching it, go right ahead. Although, keep in mind, literally all of it is bullshit. I don't even really have time to get into the historical inaccuracies that are even a part of their own history as it's happening to them. So, I guess we have to ask, why do we remember it as a triumph of filmmaking? Well, that's because we were conditioned to think that. By the Nazis, funnily enough. You see, when this movie was first released, it received critical acclaim by its contemporaries as a way to bolster and show the superiority of the new German artistry. This myth persists because the initial cultural zeitgeist surrounding it has dictated the conversation for over 84 years, despite it being a not so good. But the Nazis technically lost, you correctly note, and I could go on and on about how that doesn't really mean much. Bringing up examples like Southern revisionism. Hell, the concept of the phrase, the War of Northern Aggression. Thanks, Southern socialites. Your dumb and very wrong uncle that insists Nazis are actually socialists and the leftists are the real fascists. Jonah Goldberg. Oops, sorry. Stupid got caught in my throat. And these things aren't created in a vacuum. They're created by willful interpreters of their own history, desperate to try and regain their glory or status, or just rewrite reality to make it better for their culture or their group. But you see, these are ideological mainstays within certain groups, littered throughout the world, some of them seen as fringe, but their rise in relevancy is proof to the contrary. History isn't just shaped by winners. It can be molded and poorly recontextualized to fit any narrative, because if history is anything, it's a long story set with reliably unreliable narrators. And with that in mind, hello, my name is Ethan Ellis, and welcome to the end of Politics Podcast. I'll be your unreliable narrator, discussing politics, the news, history, and everything in between. So stay tuned for the first real episode. And DJ, play me out.